It's just like this not enoughness. I'm not adequate. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm always trying to fix, always trying to change, always trying to look for like the new bright, shiny object. I've always looked for everybody else to kind of tell me what to do. So it's like laying this groundwork to be like, I'm going to make a change and this is how I'm going to do it. And I'm going to trust myself and my own wisdom that I know the way.
Hey there, fellow rebels. Welcome to #ActuallyICan, the podcast where we say a hearty hell yes to designing life on our own terms. I'm Katie Ripp, a lifestyle coach, business mentor, and serial entrepreneur, here to guide you through the wild ride of defying what society expects of us and embracing our authenticity. On this show, we dive deep into taboo topics like death, money, spirituality, entrepreneurship, unapologetic self-care, and personal development, all while swearing and laughing along the way. Expect down and dirty conversations, plenty of humor, and a whole lot of exploration, leaving you feeling empowered to be your truest self. Whether you're craving a good laugh, seeking unconventional self-care tips, or simply looking for some camaraderie, you've come to the right place. We only get this one short life, so buckle up and let's design yours on our own terms. Ready to dive in? Let's go! Hi, Angie.
Hi, Katie.
I'm so happy to have you on the podcast.
I am so grateful to be here.
Thank you for doing this for me. Angie and I met in the Mind Rebel Academy. We have just finished, as of Friday, our International Coaching Federation certification. We have literally been together for 14 months.
Yeah.
Every Wednesday except the one Wednesday a month for the last 14 months. I feel like we've totally connected. We were able to work together in a couple of pods, which I loved. And part of the coaching certification was basically to peer coach each other. So I got to learn a little bit about Angie and she got to learn a little bit about me, which I thought was just one of the most amazing things of that certification of that academy. But it allows me also to continue to talk to people that I connected with. So Angie was gracious enough to allow me to invite her on the podcast. We have a very similar story and she is an entrepreneur. I'm going to let her talk all about that, but I'm going to let her take it away with her story. Just where you were and where you are and how different it is. Any perspectives that have changed in your life because of one thing or another. This podcast is definitely about people that have decided to do it on their own terms. Welcome.
Thank you. As you said that, and I was reminded of the name of your podcast, #ActuallyICan, it brought me back to several times throughout my life where I felt like there was something in the way that almost made me feel like I couldn't move forward. However, I've always had a sense of hope in my heart, I guess I would say. And I believe that was not only a reflection of kind of my upbringing, but I think I was just naturally born into this world with this sense of hope. And I don't know that hope necessarily occurred to me until probably, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago. I always knew it, but there wasn't a moment where I stopped and was completely just struck by this feeling I have hope that I can move forward. And that really changed everything for me in terms of building this little baby confidence, this quiet confidence that I just started to slowly chip away at. And there's been a handful of moments in my life that I can pinpoint, yes, that was it. That was my hope right there that I can just totally grasp onto. And I'd probably start with when I was in 6th grade and when I fell in love with horses. And that was my first little inkling that there was more out there that was like in my radar. There was
Oh,
more
like
for me.
exposed to?
Yes, exposed to. Absolutely. Like it was almost like I had to take that step to be like, what do I love? What am I maybe like good at? And where do I feel this like draw? And it was horses. And thankfully enough, I had parents who were very supportive of anything that I decided I wanted to do, felt a calling to do. And, it started out really small, just going to camp, riding horses. And then it was like taking lessons. And then it was leasing a horse. And then it was buying a horse. And that was like really where I feel like I started to kind of bloom. And then, things again started to unravel after that because I rode for years, but I also was dabbling in hanging out with the wrong crowd. I mean, binge drinking, all that sort of stuff so it was like, there was like these two parts of me that it was like, there's this really good, sweet, innocent girl who likes to ride horses. But then there's this other side that can be very like manipulative. I had a tendency to be very dishonest and wanted to like pull away even more so, which got me into a lot of trouble. But again, going into this idea that I knew that I was different from everybody else, I had this hope in my heart, but then there was also this like, what is wrong with me? Why I have this wonderful family? Why am I so like evil on one side, but then my other side of me is just like this sweet girl who's happy and bubbly. And I had a really hard time trying to like figure that out for a majority of my life until I stopped drinking in 2018, and that was when everything like really shifted. And that's when I was able to like access emotions that I was like numbing, that I, didn't even know that I had, that I was trying to kind of be somebody I wasn't. And that is really a big part of my story, is like these years that I struggled with who I am at my core, because it was like I was fighting actually who I authentically show up now each and every day as. And like, I don't know, I don't want to say like I'm a square, but I'm kind of like a rule follower now. I
You
like,
don't seem like a square
yeah,
to
I'm
me,
not,
but
yeah,
okay.
not a square, but like, I don't really like to like, I don't know, like I'm very much so like to like follow the rules. I like to have structure. However, I still can be very rebellious, but my life is just completely different now that I have, one, that I don't drink, and two, that I've pursued coaching as like my career. It was like when I turned 40, it was like, what the fuck do I have to show other than like my beautiful marriage with my husband, being sober from alcohol, living in a beautiful beach town. But I'm like, I don't have children. We're not going to have kids. My career had been so like up and down. And it was like 40 hit me. And I was like, what is going on? And it was difficult for me. However, there was that hope. Like there's something in you that wants to like help, wants to serve, wants to connect with people on a deeper level. And that's really like kind of what led me to being a coach. Outside of, I taught, Pilates for years, different modalities in terms of movement, but there was always this piece lacking. And that was like this soul connection that I believe now I have with clients when I work with them. Even if it is like in a movement setting, it's so different compared to what it used to be. But now it's like I take my coaching hat and I'm able to like marry that with movement. So that's evolved as well. And I know I'm kind of like rambling, but I just go back to that like hope and that faith and that trust, which has taken years and years to build, tear back down, build it back up again. But today, as I sit here chatting with you, I've never felt so confident in who I am, as well as trusting myself, because I think that's the other big thing is I could never trust myself. I couldn't trust myself because when I drank, I was a completely different person. I was angry. I was erratic. I was out of control. And it's like, that's what drew me to drinking, was this way to like escape. And I feel like it was like this escape from me, but also an escape from like my family. Because I was an only child, I am an only child, and I was with my mom all the time. And, you know, I love her to death, but she can be a lot. And I just wanted to like get away. And that to me was drinking and being wild and crazy. And I couldn't trust myself at all. And so it just built up these years and years of not being able to trust myself. With that, I couldn't trust my body. I couldn't trust people around me because I felt like they were always looking for or seeking out something else. Like it was just this like lack of trust. And within the last year, that trust has really changed as well.
There are so many things in that I would love to touch on. One of them, you said quiet confidence. Like, what a gorgeous term, right? Like to build that quiet confidence is just, there's something about confidence in general, right? And well, this is my podcast, so I'm allowed to have any opinion I want. I think that confidence doesn't just come to people. You got to earn that shit.
Right.
And the other thing you said was like, and I call it flipping my magnet, which was like when I was drinking, I was constantly pushing, you know, it's like two magnets when they like repel each other. Yep. Like you're constantly pushing one magnet away from the other one. And the day I quit drinking, I flipped my magnet. Yeah. That's what happened to me, right? Like it took me years and years of, I mean, I medicated, right? Like that's what drinking was for me. It was an escape. It was a medication. And then I could never trust myself. And now I've gotten to the point where I trust myself so much that like, there's really nothing I don't think I can do anymore.
Yeah.
Because I went from like not trusting myself to do anything at all, even though I was very capable, to trusting myself so much that I'm like, fuck it, we'll try this. And if it doesn't work, whatever, we'll try something different. There's just like nothing that I'm like that scared of anymore. The trust part was huge for me to hear from you. I think that's such an unspoken, I don't even know what the word, like the term is. Like, we just don't talk about how much we don't trust ourselves.
100%.
And I think it's because we don't know who we are.
Right.
And so like, what the fuck do we trust? Like, where do we go? I don't know what values to trust. I don't know what to do because I get a different reaction from externally all the time. Like, what do you trust when you're looking for validation outside of yourself all the time? You can't trust anything. And now that I don't really look for it except for myself, and I know my body so well now that if my body don't like it, it's not right. Right. Like I'm so misaligned if my body reacts in a certain way that, you know, it's one of those bee-oo, 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 right? Like it's a huge alarm for me. So I'm curious if you feel like that at all.
Absolutely. I think that's such a great point. For years, you know, it was always like and I still deal with like GI issues with stomach stuff constantly. But it started when I was 5. And I remember being at the pediatrician and him saying to my mom, well, some kids have headaches, some kids have stomach aches, and that's just how they deal with stress. And it was just like, that's how we were supposed to move forward. And this is what you have to deal with. And it was like, that's where everything would like erupt. And of course it would, because I'm not regulated, you know, my nervous system is dysregulated. And that should have been the first thing that was like actually discussed, like what's going on with this child that she's, you know, not regulated.
And also what's causing a 5-year-old stress?
Right, exactly.
And how are we dealing with the stress rather than, oh, it's just stress. Don't worry about your stomach.
Right.
Like,
So it was just like mind blowing that I was supposed to now deal with this all the time. And that was maybe even the first place that I could not trust like my body. It would be like I would constantly be fighting it. And I think that is absolutely like kind of the first thing that showed up. I don't think that I was ever taught how to identify emotions. I think my emotions were all suppressed and they probably all ended up in my gut. I don't know that I was ever taught how to self-regulate and then be able to like co-regulate, you know, because I was like attached to my mom. Like I was supposed to be with her constantly. I feel like I was supposed to be not only her daughter, but her best friend, her partner, because my dad was there, but he had his own set of issues and was, if not already an alcoholic, was becoming an alcoholic probably at that time. And so it just started to like unravel there. And then trying to navigate like being an adolescent, a teenager, I was, I went through that phase like we all do of being just very awkward. And I was a chubbier kid. And I dealt with a lot of issues in terms of like bullying because I didn't look like my friends who were like stereotypical little like peanuts that were tiny and down the road, they were all cheerleaders, which is fine. But I grew up in a very small town. And when you look different, you act different, you don't really fit in. It's like, where am I supposed to go with this? And so again, that kind of creates more like trust issues. I don't trust the people I'm around. I don't trust myself. I don't really trust my home situation because I feel like there's something going on there, even though from the outside, it looked like picture perfect. And it just begins to build and build. And then it's like, when one thing starts to present itself that could be an outlet for escaping all of this, it's like, give it to me. And my mom is such like, and again, I adore her, but she was a very sheltered child, went to like parochial school, did everything her parents told her to do and didn't do any, was just a very good kid. And I was like, I don't want to be anything like that. So I will go as far away from that as I can. And my dad was like stereotypical, like loved muscle cars, was partying, drinking, and he was as opposite of her as you could find. And I was like, okay, that looks better to me. I think I want to go that direction. Plus, I thought, well, maybe this will be a way that, and not really like I knew this, but I think internally it was like, well, maybe this is a way I could connect with my dad. He's really cool. Yep. And my mom is not so cool, which that did not work out at all. But, again, it's just like trying to find anything that can be like almost like mine and can move me farther away from where I want to be. And that is, I don't want to be in this house. I don't want to be anywhere near these people. I can't trust them to figure things out. I could, they were, but that's out.
I understand what you're saying.
Who's running the show here? Because it feels like I'm the one that should be in charge. And even now to this day, I'm like, feel like I'm like, parenting them sometimes. And I'm like, what is this about? So yeah, kind of long story short, but it was just once I started to dabble in all of that, it was my way out. It was a way to just completely numb. And probably the first time I ever got drunk, I think I was like in 8th grade, and it was like a blackout sort of situation. Then that became my way of being. Like there was no other, it was just like, as soon as I knew I was going to be drinking, it's like extreme, full on. I don't know how I'm going to, get to my bed that night. I don't know where it was just like, that's how my body reacted, was just like blackout drunk. I could have 3 drinks or I could have 20 drinks and it would all amount to the same sort of thing. And then the waking up after, the next day, it's just like, what did I do? What did I say? Where was I at? And just this enormous amount of shame and guilt that just then continued to like steamroll over and over with. And it was just like this roller coaster. But all I would look forward to was the moment where I knew, okay, my day has ended and I can go out for a drink or I can go out and have a cocktail. Oh, we're going to dinner tonight. I can't wait because I get to have a cocktail. And that's all that I like thought about. And then I would use exercise to burn the calories, to burn off the booze, to whatever. And so it was just, again, this constant like fight of trying to almost sober up, try to get my body to where I thought or wanted it to be because I was dealing with so many body issues at the same time. And it was so just draining my life for so many years from the time I was probably 13 until I was whatever, like 38. I don't know. Yeah, I guess 38. Honestly, it was like a switch finally flipped and it was like God gave me a gift. He's like, here, I'm going to make this really easy on you. You're not an alcoholic yet, but you're on your way there. And you can see what's happened to your dad over the last 10 years. Stroke, almost lost his marriage. I mean, who knows what else he would have lost. But I'm going to give you this and I'm going to make it really easy on you because I never craved booze. I craved the social. I craved the experience of it. I craved that. I never like woke up and was like, I need a drink. If
Yeah.
anything, I'm like waking up like, how do I get to work today? I'm going to be stunk. I mean, with the smell of booze and cigarettes. So yeah, it was just like, it was honestly, and I thank God every day, it was like one of the easiest things I've ever done. It was just like, once I said no and I really meant it, it was like, here we go. This is your new life and it's going to be really good. And there's going to be really hard moments where you're going to have to be in settings where you're around people who are highly intoxicated and you're going to have to make a decision. What are you going to do? And now I see it and I'm so fucking disgusted. Like, I don't really socialize much at all anymore. I have my like boundaries. I know where and I can go out. I know when I can't. And most of the time I'm just like, I just don't want to be around people who are drinking or who are drunk. It just makes me so disgusted.
Yeah. I mean, I'm also an ex-smoker and I'm like the worst
Yeah.
ex-smoker because I smell smoke and I'm like, ugh.
Same. Yes.
I'm
Yes.
just like yeah.
100%. Like, oh, I just can't even be anywhere where there's cigarette smoke because I was, a smoker.
It's not because I want it. It's because I
No.
like, it's disgusting to me.
Yes.
Again, so much of what you said totally resonates with me. I'm curious, was this a lifestyle decision for you?
Well, yes, I think that it was like I knew that I would be on the same path as my dad. I also knew that my marriage probably would not survive if I still continued to drink. And it was just like, what are you doing? There's no other way but for you to stop drinking. Yeah.
And you said you started really young. I did too. I think the first time I got drunk, I was in 8th grade too. And I also, mine was an escape, right? Like an escape from my life. But I always felt bad about it. Always.
Horrible.
Since the first time I ever had a drink, I always felt like I shouldn't be doing it. Not like in a really cute, rebellious way. Like, this is going to fuck up my life somehow. And I should not be doing this. In my 20s, in my 30s, even when it was fine, it wasn't fine for me. I would wake up every single day with my head in my hands on the toilet with horrible shame over of I shouldn't be doing that. Why couldn't I just have one? Why can't I be like everybody else? Why am I doing right? Like all of the questions. And then I would also go and work out to work it off. And then by 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I'd be like, it wasn't that bad. Right. Like, and then it would start over. It was a vicious cycle for decades for me. It was just over and over again. And I tried to quit, right? Like every Monday I would try to quit, right? Like every, clean slate, I'm quitting Monday, we'd have the last Sunday fun day, right? Like, I tried a number of times. I never talked to anybody about it. I just like, if I was going to do it, I was going to hunker down and I wasn't going to drink and I would take off, 10 days. And then it was, dry January and sober October and, all of these things. And then for a while I would make it, 2.5 hours or 2 days or something. It got to a point where I couldn't do it for very long. And then it was never rock bottom for me. I never hit anywhere. I never killed anybody. I never got a DUI. Like I always went to work. I might have smelled like wine, but like I always went to work. I never didn't fulfill an obligation, never really missed anything. I would power through a whole lot of things. And then on my husband's 40th birthday, I left the party early because I had just had enough. And the next day I woke up and I was like, I'm not drinking anymore, period. Like full stop. This is going to ruin my life if I continue to do this. And I had decades of that same conversation. But for some reason that day, I just decided. And I like the Latin term, and I say this in a couple of other episodes, so sorry if I'm repeating myself, but like the Latin meaning of decide is to cut off. Like decide is cut off. And that's how I run my whole life. When I decide something, when it's actually a decision, when I actually decide it, I never look back. I just it's become really easy for me. I mean, you give me like moderation or a maybe, no, but you give me yes or no, and it's yes or no for me. It's just not how I was built. But when I have decided something, it's full stop. There's no going back. Like many people have asked me, they're like, do you think you'll ever drink again? I'm like, fuck no. Like, no, I'm never tempted. I can be around people. I don't love it, to be honest, like to be around drunk people. And I've also like my sobriety to me is the most important thing in my life because it's given me everything.
Yes.
So I protect it at all costs.
Yep.
So if there's anything that threatens it in any way, I remove myself from a situation. And again, I don't feel tempted, but I just don't like to be in environments necessarily. It's just not like part of my lifestyle anymore. I mean, I like a good non-alcoholic everything,
Yeah.
but it's just not like my lifestyle anymore. And it's been 3 years for me. You said 6 years for you. So you've got double the time.
Yeah.
I'm curious, like, what did your day one look like?
My husband and I went to his cousin's wedding in Georgia, I think. And I don't even really remember what finally really did it. But I remember being like, all right, this is going to be the last time I drink. And we came back from the wedding like January 7th. I remember sitting at a bar, getting takeout, having like my last drink. And then it was Monday, I want to say, that started it. And day one, I was walking dogs at that time because I was taking a break from teaching. I needed to get away from like teaching movement classes. I was managing a bar studio and it was just like, so I was just walking dogs. So I had a ton of time on my hands to really start to like dig into me, start to reflect, start to like notice things, patterns, peel back the layers, all that sort of stuff. And I just remember it just being like so easy, but at the same time, I had done it so many, and I don't want to say done it so many times. There was probably a handful of times where I took a month off, maybe 3 months. I think one time I took 6 months off. So I kind of knew what to expect. I knew I had to have a plan. That was the one thing going into it was like, I have to have a plan of like when we are out in a social setting, when we are going to dinner. But it was like, as soon as I knew, okay, usually it would be like a coffee would be my drink in my hand because it was always like I needed to have something in my hand, a coffee or a tea at dinner. Maybe if we're out, I'll have just like a soda water or like a Red Bull or something like that. But it was like knowing that I had to have something. And it was as soon as I started to have that morning wake up where I was so freaking happy. It was like a weekend where you'd wake up on Saturday morning or Sunday morning. And it's just like, oh my gosh, I didn't do anything that I'm like ashamed of last night. That feeling started to be like my driving force. Like it started to fuel something inside of me that was just like, you're doing it. You're doing it. And there's no going back. And it's so hard to really even kind of like pinpoint. It was just like I said, it was like seriously like this gift that was like, I'm going to give this to you. Let's see what happens with it. And at the same time, I started listening to the Headspace app for meditation. And I started with like really small, like 3-minute meditations, 5-minute, 10-minute, maybe 2 10 minutes in a day. But that was just like my security blanket in a way. I started to notice so many things about just being able to sit for a short amount of time and notice thoughts that were coming in, but also be able to like start to regulate myself and start to see like things starting to almost melt away, different body sensations, different stories that I had created in my head. And it was just like each day is a new day. Okay, we're going to do this again today. We're going to do this again today. And you're going to feel really freaking good. You're going to keep feeling good. And it just became this new way of being. And I think the other thing too is I started to feel so proud of myself because I'll tell you, this just came to me. I remember the Jersey Shore and Mike Sarantino, the situation. And I remember when he got sober and I'm like, what the fuck? If Mike Sarantino could do this, I can do this. Like there was like different celebrities before sober curious, like celebrities now are like, I'm sober. And it was like kind of a cool thing to do a while ago. Some people.
Yeah, when it was Robert Downey Jr.
Yes.
and nobody thought it was cool.
Yeah. And then it's just like, oh my gosh, they can do it. I think that I can do this too. And I remember thinking, if I ever got to 5 years, oh my gosh, that is just like, that blows my mind. And then it happened. And then it's just like being so proud of it and being in situations where I'm with old groups of friends too. And I'm just like, I don't do this anymore. Like, this just isn't how I want to live my life. And even new groups of friends, when we moved here like 5 years ago, it was like, nobody knows that side of me. Nobody knows that
Yep.
version of
Yep.
me. And now I can be like really who I am here. They have no idea. And that felt really good too, to step into like a new, like I'm living in a new place. It's a beach town. People love to freaking party and drink here. I would not have been able to live here if it was 5, 6 years ago at all, because I would be at the bar down the street
Yeah.
every day. And the other thing too is like, my husband doesn't drink very much anymore either, because his lifestyle has changed so much, and he's seen like the good stuff that comes out of not, you know, belly up at the bar every night, or, so it has filtered into so many different areas of my life. I'll like kind of go back in time too. There was a time, so my first day was like January 8th. My dad was still going through all of his stuff, and he hit rock bottom many times, but he hit rock bottom 2 weeks after I decided, that I'm done. And then he started his true sobriety journey, and he has now been sober the same amount of time as I
Oh,
have, except
wow.
2 weeks less. So he was a functioning alcoholic. We didn't know. I mean, he would put it in his coffee mug. I mean, there was no, now, like we knew the signs. We could see the signs then. As soon as, he would tell us, no, I'm not drinking. Yes, he has been drinking, because you can tell. I mean,
Yeah.
even it's so easy to tell now, like when somebody is drunk. I'm just like, even you're watching TV and it's like or some reality show, and it's just like, look, they're wasted.
Yeah.
Like, what
Yeah.
this, here we go.
I can tell by my mom's, like the way her mascara starts to like fade in like the smallest, tiniest, like, or like the way she moves her eyes in one way, right? Like
Yep.
it's just
The
now
voice.
I can see it everywhere, right?
Yeah.
I also have like probably some muscle memory around that, but yeah, my husband also, like, we were drinking buddies. That's how we
Same
met. That's
with
what
my
we were
husband and
doing,
I.
right? Like it was our
That's
entire
it.
social life.
Yep.
It was like that. That's what we did.
Yeah.
We drank, and then, but he can pick it up or put it down. I never could.
Yeah.
And so now that I haven't drank for a really long time, and he's seen a lot of, like, obviously some great progression out of me, he's just never drank. I mean, we always like binge drank as a couple. That's what we did. But I didn't realize how much I was the instigator.
Yes.
Until I quit. And I was like, holy shit. Like our entire, like, he's completely content being in the shed and working, 20 hours a day. Like that's what he always wanted that. I just, like, we went out to dinner because I could drink there, or I would drink at home, or, whatever it was. So it's fascinating to see. And I have talked to a couple of other people about like the osmosis, right? Like being around somebody that, I mean, what do they say? Like you are the 5 people you surround yourself with, or, whatever that is. And it's fascinating to see the difference that people have just by being around somebody else. The same is true the other way, right? Like the same as when I was drinking, it was the same, right? Like it's a fascinating time. Hello, my friends. It's Katie here. If you're feeling stuck or searching for more purpose in your life, I have something special for you. My new book, Midlife on Purpose, is out now. It's all about embracing midlife as a time for growth, joy, and living authentically. Packed with worksheets, tools, reflections, and trackers, this workbook is your guide to rediscovering your passions and creating a life you love. Whether you're navigating career changes, personal challenges, or simply seeking more fulfillment, Midlife on Purpose will inspire you to live boldly and with intention. Get your copy today and start your journey to a more purposeful life. Available at katierip.com and Amazon. I'm curious, when you decided to quit drinking, what fears you had around it, right? Because, like, I'm guessing if you felt bad about it, you thought about quitting for a long time. What fears you had, and how much of that has actually come true, or fears around it?
Fears around stopping?
Yeah, like what would happen if you stopped, kind of thing.
I don't know that I necessarily had any right away. It was more so later on in my life when I started to feel like I didn't fit in again. It came up again. And it was almost like I started to notice that when I would drink, it unlocked something. So I was more like extroverted. And I like kind of tossle between being introverted and extroverted. But when I'm in certain settings, I find it very difficult to just like talk to people. Like it takes me a while to trust and to open up and not be surface because I hate like just surface level conversations. It just doesn't do anything for me. But I started to feel like I don't have anything to offer these people anymore because I feel kind of awkward. Everyone's drinking. I don't feel like I can have a true conversation with them because whether they're drunk or not, it's not really who they are. So it's like I would kind of clam up and be like, what do I have to offer? I don't have anything to talk about. And then I would get in my head and just get super self-conscious and just be like, I need to get out of here. And that has changed a lot, I believe, with starting the MRA. Like my communication has opened up a lot. I'm like, yeah, actually, I have a hell of a lot to offer. And if I don't want to talk to somebody because they're drunk, I don't give a shit. And I'm just going to like walk away from it. It's not a big deal. But the other thing too is I started to see people for who they really were too. It's like this veil is lifted and you have this new lens. It's like I'm a baby in a new world. And it's like, whoa, I didn't see these people this way before, particularly my mom. And I kind of knew her, but once I stopped drinking, it was probably the first 2 or 3 years everything she did pissed me off. And it was like I had all this like rage, anger. I don't know what it was. It was just like her controlling nature, always like kind of hovering and trying to do things the way she wanted them done. And I was like, no more. I am like my own person now. I'm a freaking adult and I don't need you like trying to like run the show anymore. And so I didn't know that was going to be a fear, but that was a lot of stuff that I had to deal with was like new relationships, weeding people out that I would almost then feel guilty. Like I can't really give you a reason as to why I don't want to be around you anymore, except for like maybe drinking, but there's something else there that bothers me about you. And I'm just listening to my intuition. And I started to kind of really like close in on my circle, almost feel antisocial at times. But now it's just like, I'm just honoring what works for me, what feels true to me and what doesn't. And I've always been kind of like an observer of people. I mean, I remember being in like 7th grade and the first time I went to Chicago, like sitting in the hotel room and staying up all night, just watching people go up and down like State Street and go into like the McDonald's that was across from our hotel and making up all these like stories in my head. Oh, that person's like doing this and that. And like, I was just such like, I loved watching people and watching what they did, their actions, their behaviors. So now as like, this veil is like, it's clear and I'm seeing people differently. Now it's just like, whoa, this is a lot coming at me, but I'll do with it what I want. And I think that's why I love coaching so much.
Yeah.
I can just sit there and like listen and observe and without like judging or trying to like, whatever, predict, fix, all that sort of stuff. It's just like people are so interesting. And I also feel like because it's like the society of like, go more urgency, pressure, keeping up with the Joneses. Nobody gives themselves or even knows how to pause and reflect and be like, does this work for me or doesn't it? And if it doesn't work for me, that's okay. I don't need to fall in line with everybody else just because they're doing it or I feel like I should do it. It's just like, it's such a beautiful thing to be able to gift yourself space to be like, what feels good to me? What feels true to me? Who am I really? Like, that's the other thing is I feel like,
do I really want?
Yes. What do I really want in this life? And it's not like we have to know right away at all. Like, that's the beauty of it is having the space to let it just evolve over time. And then one day you're like, whoa, when did I get here? This is really cool. I like this new life that I've built for myself.
Yeah.
It took a lot of freaking hard work, but I do it over and over again because I know that I would not be sitting here today if I did not stop drinking. Like that is the one thing in my life that, like you said, you protect your sobriety at all costs. Same with me. Like it is just like, it is what has gotten me to where I am today.
Yeah, for me, it's the one. First of all, I always knew it was the one thing. I always knew it was the one thing that if I could just get this one thing licked, the rest of it would fall into place. And that's exactly what happened, which is why I protect it, which is why I do whatever the fuck I want to do as long as it protects my sobriety. And that's kind of a loaded phrase because if you put a bottle of Chardonnay in front of me right now, there's no way I would drink it. So like, I'm not protecting it like that.
Right.
I'm protecting it like I don't put anything in my life anymore that I need to escape from in a bottle of Chardonnay.
Yes. Yes.
And so I figured out what I wanted too. Like, you know, of course, do I want more money? Sure. You know, do I want some of that stuff? Yeah. I want peace.
Yes.
I want contentment. I want to be able to deal with anxiety instead of push it down. It took me a long time to figure out what I really wanted. And what I want is to live my life however I want to live it. Like, I don't care what people think about it. I mean, I guess I also still sort of live in the norms. And when I say people that are living outside the societal norms or people that are like, actually, I can do whatever I want to do. I'm not talking about people fucking blowing up their lives and, you know, leaving their 4 kids and going to live in Thailand. I mean, if that's what you really want to do, by all means, I'm on board. You go do that. However, it could just be something as easy as I don't want to go out on a Friday night.
Right.
It does not have to be these like fucking crazy things. It doesn't have to be I'm selling my house and living in a bus. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is figuring out what you really want out of this one life and figuring out how to get it. And I've said this before. For me, it was alcohol. That's what I masked my emotions with. Like, that's how I escaped. That's how I medicated. That's how I got through my life. That's how I coped. It was not a great coping mechanism, but it sure did the job at the time. But for other people, it could be something else. Could be smoking weed, could be shopping, could be, you know, scrolling on Instagram for 6 hours a day and not knowing where it goes, checking out in front of Netflix. Now, a lot of these things I've also done. Like, I also like veg out in front of Netflix, but I also recognize now that now I'm escaping. And like, what am I escaping from? Right. I think that's what the MRA really gave me, is a way to like coach myself out of the deeper layers, or like the thing that's under the layers, and also the skills to help other people do it themselves. And I love it. Like, I love that part of it. But to your point, I point everything back to my sobriety. My life would be nowhere where it is right now if I didn't quit drinking, if I didn't decide that one day and it didn't just click. And I hear a lot of people like, what made it click? I don't know.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know. I don't know why I woke up that day and that was the day that I didn't put a 90 days on it, or a break, or I was just really honest with people. I made some guidelines for myself, which were outside of, well, I'm only going to drink on Tuesday. I'm not going to drink over the weekend. I'm only going to drink beer. I'm only going to drink, you know, whatever. Like, those rules that's a different story. But I made myself, no matter what, stretch before I went to bed every night. Like, I made myself a stretching routine. Did that have anything to do with sobriety? I don't know. Right? Like, it did for me. For 60 days straight, that's what I did before I went to bed. And there were other things, right? Like, if I went to the refrigerator, I counted to 10. Or if I went to the grocery store and I walked, like, you know, because there's lots of muscle memory and habit here that you have to break.
Absolutely.
And so I would walk to the grocery store and like walk straight to the boxes of wine. And I would have to physically tell myself to move.
Yeah.
And those are really hard things in the beginning, but these things never cross my mind now.
I know. Yeah.
And it's so hard to think that it would have never crossed my mind, right? When I was in the thick of it, I was like, there is no way I can do this and never want it again. Like, I thought I would have to fight it and want it forever.
Yep.
And I just, like, almost kind of from day one, I just didn't.
Yeah.
I knew it was never going to get any better. That was the other thing.
Yep.
I had tried so many times. Every time I had stopped drinking and started again, it only got worse.
Right. Yep.
It never got any better.
No.
Even if I told myself it was going to get better, it never got any better. It only got worse. I would drink more wine. I would drink more frequently. I would remove myself from situations so I didn't have to like I was started drinking at home alone. Like it never got any better. I just knew it would never get any better. Like I had proven to myself over and over that this was not going to get any better. There was no way out except for me to be done. Totally.
Yeah. Best decision ever, for sure. Going back to your point about like the rock bottom, there was never really a rock bottom for me either. I think there was so many signs. I mean, I go back to this one because I don't know how I got through this, but I mean, I was in college and I was a junior in college and I went to a bachelorette party and I was on my way home. I decided to take the drink with me because that's the great idea, is to take the gin and tonic with you from the bar and have
Obviously.
it in your, cup holder. I think I had a pipe to smoke pot too in the car because I remember it like it was on the floor when I got home, but I was probably a mile from my parents' house and I missed the curve and I went through like 5 pine trees and my car just went like between them and didn't hit head on. And I backed myself out. I don't really remember any of this. Backed myself out, went home, went into the house and told my mom, I don't know what happened. Somebody hit me in the bar parking lot. And she's like, well, let's go out and look at your car. And I was like, okay, we go out. There's like pine cone beetles, limbs like coming out from the side of the car, and she's like, no one hit you in the parking lot. Like you hit a car. And I'm like, I don't know. Just, like get inside. I mean, I was 21 at the time. And I just remember just thinking to myself, how did I survive? How did I even survive that? And then, it goes into like my dad actually talked to the insurance person and was like, she missed a deer. So they had no idea. And like this big lie coming from, at that time, I had no idea that he was struggling with alcohol as well. And then I was supposed to call the people and pay to have the work done or whatever. And my mom was standing right there. And like the child that I was, I pretended that I was calling them and like hit the receiver button. So nobody was on the other line. And I told her, no, they said it's fine, that they'll take care of it. And I didn't tell her that story until probably we were talking about stuff. And I told her a couple weeks ago, I never like apologized to them. I mean, like I should not be laughing, but it was just that's who I was. Whatever lie, whatever thing I could do. And it's like always covering my tracks, always covering my tracks. But the crazy part about this story is I was at probably 5 years after that happened, I was at a bar. And this kid that I graduated high school with that I wasn't friends with at all, I probably wasn't very nice to him either, came up to me in the bar, and he's like, do you remember being in an accident several years ago? And in that moment, my heart like dropped. And I was like, and I kind of started to skirt around it because I didn't know what he was going to say. And he's like, I actually saw it happen. And I pulled over, got out of my car and asked you if you're okay. And you're like, I got to get out of here, and just took off and left. And I am having so many emotions because I'm still drinking at the same time. But I said to him, thank you so much for stopping to make sure I was okay. I'm so sorry that I was probably such a bitch to you. But, things that I had done in my past were still continuing to show like the damage that I had done and things that were still sitting inside of me. That's just like one story of like shit that I did or put people through. But I always felt so shameful. And I just felt like there was this side of me that was just this horrible, terrible person that like, what is wrong with me? Because I know that there's good. I know there's good in me. And that probably leads me to, I was brought up Lutheran, even though like I would like, my mom would be like, it's time for church. And I'd be like, I'm still sleeping or I'm sick, to try to get out of it or whatever. But I am so grateful that she instilled that in me because to be completely honest, that's been like one of the, if not the thing that has helped me through this process is my faith and constant prayer, handing things over, telling myself, you are not the conductor on this train. You are just a passenger. God is in charge. He will take care of it. And it really, I go back to that. I'm even more so spiritual than I was then. And my faith is just my guiding light. But that is what I rely on for everything in my life to help direct my path is trusting in God's plan. And yeah, I know he's been preparing me and he's been working behind the scenes, and this was just part of it. And I believe that it will continue to evolve as I continue to grow my coaching business and support others, and whatever they're in recovery or self-worth or, body image. I mean, the list goes on and on, but it's just knowing that is what I have to stand on and what I have to light my way is truly like, it's like, I can't even put words to it, because I, again, believe that he's the one who was just like, this is a gift. Let's see what you do with your sobriety. And thank goodness I took it and ran with it.
Well, and look what you've done.
Yeah.
Speaking of coaching, I'd love for you to tell us like what's happening there, because I'm just so curious about what are you going to do? Where's it going to go? I mean, we've been in this thing for a really long time, although it feels like it went so fast too.
I know.
Yeah. Spill the tea. I'm so curious. And of course it might change, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so open to that and just holding this very loosely. Right now it's just one-on-one coaching, and I'm seeing a pattern of clients, primarily women, that I'm working with that are kind of fed up with the way things have been going, the way that they've been living their life. It's like they know there's a change coming, but they don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to get there, whether that is, a huge life decision, a new job, leaving a marriage, just feeling like I can't keep doing what I'm doing. I'm getting the same results. I need something different. And it goes back to that hope. It's like this deep hope, this deep feeling, this deep knowing that there is something more, but I just don't know where to start. So that's been kind of a pattern. Also, this confidence and self-worth. I'm seeing a lot of that come through. And I believe that I've also dealt with that and continue to let that kind of evolve for myself. But it's just like this not enoughness. I'm not adequate. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm always trying to fix, always trying to change, always trying to look for the new bright, shiny object. And outside validation, it seems like there's so much of it's kind of coming my way too, it's like I've always looked for everybody else to kind of tell me what to do, to tell me how to look, to tell me how to act, where I go to school, what my job is. And it's like, I don't really know how to and I say this loosely, but think for myself. So it's like laying this groundwork, this scaffolding or foundation to be like, no, I'm an adult in my whatever 30s or 40s or 50s or whatever it may be. And I'm going to make a change, and this is how I'm going to do it. And I'm going to trust myself and my own wisdom that I know the way. And with the help of partnering with a coach or with someone that you trust, we're going to move you closer to what you want to achieve, and you're going to do it, and you're going to be brilliant and amazing and awesome. But it's like these little baby steps that so often I feel like as a society, it's just like the quicker, the faster we want to get there, the easiest way. And it's like, that's not true. That's not real life. And the success does not come getting there quicker, getting there faster. The feeling of accomplishment and success comes in that space in between, when all of a sudden you just wake up one day and you're like, how the hell did I get here? I love this life that I've created. And I trust myself and I believe in myself. And the beautiful thing also is to see that filter into other areas of those that I work with, their life, is to see, the gift that they have now, and they're able to share or express or teach or guide someone else in a way that they were never supported. I feel like there's such a effect of creating change, not only in your own life, but then you create change in other people's life, and they do. And it's just like this thing that just keeps on building and building. And we so need it in our world today.
Yeah. If somebody wants to work with you,
absolutely,
where do they go?
Yeah.
What are they looking for?
Yeah. So social media, Instagram, Angie Reens, or Happiness Coach Angie, my two handles. And then Rooted Mindful Movement is my website. And there's a scheduling page to book a call, or even just sending me a short email to connect. are probably the two easiest ways to connect and get in touch.
And we will definitely put that in the show notes too. I have one last coaching question for you, because this has always just been like a curiosity. It's just a question that comes up for me a lot, which is like, what is a life coach?
Yes.
And the sort of like icky connotation we have around life coach. And one of my real priorities of this podcast is to sort of, because the Mind Rebel Academy to me is like stripped all of my preconceived notions away from it. And I think that we've done a real disservice to coaching by believing that life coaching isn't a legitimate job, or that people don't need it, or it's a luxury item, or why don't you just go to a therapist, or, what, all those like weird, icky feeling. And not everybody has icky feelings around it. And I certainly don't anymore, but I did. And I told Taryn right away, like when I went into my discovery call about going into this coaching, I was like, I don't like the term life coach. I don't know what it is about it. I think it's got a weird something.
Yes.
I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But it's got a weird something to me. And she's like, oh, I get it. I mean, she did say, she was like, oh, well, I understand. And actually their podcast goes into this on one of the episodes too. Yeah. So I'm curious, it probably will end up being one of the questions I ask all coaches I have on here is like, how do you feel about that term? What does it mean to you? What does it mean to you after MRA?
Yeah. I feel like, I don't remember if it was Taryn or Michelle, but one of them said something along the lines as it kind of gives this like feeling of like, I have my life figured out, so let me coach you sort of thing. And that is absolutely not, like, nothing about that is what a coach is or does in terms of like what I believe a coach is. I've said it a few times in the past just because it was like, I was on the spot and it's like life coach. And then it's like, like that ick. And it's like, even then it would be, well, what's a life coach? And it's like, no, I absolutely don't identify with that anymore. It's more, I mean, I always say I'm a mindfulness coach. I'm a personal coach, or just a coach in general. And my belief is coaching is absolutely a partnership. It is a relationship. It's an opportunity to co-create with one another and to really support forward movement, taking someone from where they are now to where they desire to be. And that is not about trying to advise, fix, change. There may be a moment where I take my coaching hat off and I say, okay, this could be a moment for teaching, or this could be a moment for consulting or mentorship. However, as a coach, I believe my role is to see just not only the wisdom, but the knowing in my clients, but to believe in them, to believe that they can get their own answers, the answers that they seek. And I'm just there to hold really a warm, like, present space for them, ask really powerful questions so that they can get the answers that they're looking for and start to kind of fill this space, the in-between space, so that they're able to get to where they want to be. And the other thing about it is it's like this beautiful dance between the coach and the coachee. And it's like always tossing like the baton or the light shining like a spotlight back on the client. And it's like, well, what do you think? What do you want? How do you feel? And it's like, who asks us those questions? Not very often. It's like someone asks me a yes or no question, or if they ask me how I am, I'm like, okay, good. But how does it really feel to say, today, you know what? I feel like shit, but that doesn't define me. Yeah, I may feel like shit, or I have a ton of anxiety, but that's not who I am. And I think that it makes such an impact. It is very luxurious to really say, this is how I feel. And I'm not ashamed of it. I'm not trying to hide it. I'm being very vulnerable. I'm being very open. And to have somebody hold space for you that truly cares and truly believes in your worth and your success and like wants to see you succeed, and they're not trying to direct you in any way, is just such a, I mean, like, it's even hard for me to put words on it, because it's like after I either one am being coach or coach a client, it brings me back into alignment. It's like when I teach someone, when I am teaching a movement class or I'm teaching Pilates, it has always been for me like, no, yes, you can do this. And I see It's like, I know before they know. Like, I'm like, no, I know you can do this. And they're like looking at me like, no, there's no way I can move my body this way. And I'm like, no, you can. I'll like show you, I'll help you get you there. And we'll make adjustments along the way. But this is just like your little roadmap to wherever you want to be. And to see like those light bulb moments go off and those new awarenesses and new learning. And it's just, it is such a beautiful way to connect with somebody and to truly see them for who they are. And like the coaching principle of seeing someone whole, capable, resourceful, and creative is the only way that I see my clients, because I truly believe in that. And it just takes any pressure off to like get anybody anywhere. So yeah, that is a long-winded response, but
I love it. It was perfect.
here's the other thing too, is coaching is like, I think of it as movement. I think you're increasing your capacity. You're increasing your flexibility. Like your brain is more flexible. You're creating more like strength. You're not so rigid. Things are not so rigid anymore or boxed in. It creates this sense of like flow, of ease, of peace. And you're just continuing to strengthen these muscles. I had a client once tell me, coaching is like doing push-ups for the brain. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love that so much because it is like it's like, I got to hydrate afterwards because like, I'm just like, depleted, whether I'm coaching or being coached. It takes a lot of work and we don't do that for ourselves.
Yeah. The other thing when you were talking, when I had never been coached before I was peer coached.
Yeah.
And I've been in plenty of therapy in my life. And it's never really done it for me. So I've been in and out of therapy with lots of different therapists. The minute I got coached by someone who knew what they were doing, right, was willing to be, vulnerable in their coaching skills too.
Yeah.
As soon as I got coached, I was like, oh my God, I've never had, this is different from anything I've ever experienced. And I have always come up with, because I've been with good coaches, I've always come up with my own ideas. They just pulled it out of me.
Yep.
And that is the most rewarding, but to be coached and also to be the coach and watch somebody have an epiphany, which is just a visceral knowing of something they already know and can act on it now, is the most romantic, sexy thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like it's just the coolest experience, both as a coach and as the one being coached. I just don't know that there's anything better. Yeah. Oh, this was so good, Angie.
It was so good.
I'd love to have you back on.
I was already like thinking of like, oh my gosh, I want to ask you this. And I'm like,
oh, we could do that. I mean, we could have like a whole round robin of this because I think it is really cool. And again, I don't know why I think I should be an advocate for coaching, but it is something that I like really feel that passionate about now because I've experienced it like at a knowing level that I am capable of doing it. And so is everybody else. Like I'm not special. I just had a good coach and to like get down and dirty and peel back some of those layers and really like give people the space. And when you were saying like giving people the space to do, when somebody asks how you are and you're like, oh, busy, but fine. Right. That's the new response. Also, when I ask people how they are and they can give me, actually, this really fucking amazing thing happened to me. And I want to tell somebody about it that doesn't have any judgment, doesn't think I'm bragging, doesn't think I'm a narcissist, doesn't think I'm this and this. I'm just like genuinely listening and loving every second of somebody being in their own corner. I just like, when do we have the chance to tell people that we are fucking amazing?
Right. Exactly.
Like when? Like never, unless you're on Instagram and you have the balls to say, I did something really fucking cool today with no attachment to the outcome of somebody saying, well, you're a narcissist, which actually is not the actual definition. But I also just love to be like a champion and cheerleader for people. And this gives me the opportunity to do that. And I love it so much. So speaking of, it may sound really weird that I'm a coach and I'm like advertising your coaching. It's not weird to me, right? Like there's plenty for us to go around.
Absolutely.
If you connect with Angie on this, I want you to call her up and have a coaching session with her, right? Like those are things that just like a therapist, you have to find the right person, and we're all not going to be for everybody. Yeah. So finding the right coach for you. And if this resonated with you, absolutely like reach out to Angie. She will happily take you on as a client.
Absolutely.
I think we should do like a coaching round robin. I think it would be like super fun to be, either a coaching circle on here or whatever that looks like. Yeah. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. And we'll leave all of Angie's stuff in the podcast notes. And that's a wrap on today's episode. I hope you enjoyed diving deep into the world of living authentically with me. Before you go, don't forget to connect with me on Instagram. Shoot me a message at Katie Rip. I'd love to hear your thoughts on today's episode and connect with you further. And remember, if you want more details on today's episode or just want to explore more about designing your life unapologetically, head on over to my website at katierip.com. There, you'll find all the juicy details and resources you need to keep the inspiration flowing. Lastly, if you'd like to join me on the show, whether it's to tell about your experience of designing your own life, to share your expertise, or if you'd like to participate in lifestyle coaching live on air, don't hesitate to reach out. Your story could inspire countless others on their own path to living authentically. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, keep living boldly, designing your life, and remember, #actually, I can.